You've probably had moments where you finally had time to rest. No urgent tasks, no obligations, nothing you had to do. You sat down, tried to relax, maybe watched something or just did nothing. But instead of feeling relieved, you felt guilty. Not because you were avoiding something important. Just because you weren't being productive. And that guilt made it impossible to actually enjoy the rest you were supposed to be having. This isn't about work ethic or poor boundaries. It's about something deeper that most people don't realize is happening. Your brain has learned to associate rest with falling behind. And once that association is formed, resting stops feeling like recovery and starts feeling like a mistake. Most people assume guilt during rest means they're not actually tired or that they secretly don't deserve a break. But that's not what's going on. The guilt isn't a signal that you should be working. It's a conditioned response that's been reinforced over time by the way productivity is structured in modern life. When you're working or being productive, your brain gets constant feedback. Tasks get completed, emails get sent, things move forward. That feedback creates a sense of progress and validation. But when you rest, there's no feedback. Nothing is being completed, nothing is moving forward. And your brain interprets that absence of progress as a problem. Research into productivity and rest shows that people have become conditioned to equate activity with value. If you're doing something, you're contributing. If you're not doing something, you're wasting time. That logic gets internalized to the point where rest feels like a failure to meet an invisible standard. The problem is that rest doesn't produce anything visible. You can't point to rest and say, "This is what I accomplished." It's restorative, but the benefits are internal and delayed. Your brain doesn't experience them in the moment. So when you're resting, all your brain sees is the absence of output. And it responds with discomfort. Let's say you finish your work for the day and sit down to watch a show. You've earned the break. You've done what you needed to do. But within minutes, you start thinking about what else you could be doing. The laundry, the emails, the project you've been putting off. None of those things are urgent, but the fact that they exist makes rest feel irresponsible. Or think about someone who takes a weekend to do nothing. They don't have plans, they're not catching up on work, they're just resting. By Sunday afternoon, they feel worse than they did on Friday. Not because they didn't rest, but because they spent the entire weekend feeling like they should have been doing something else. This is where the uncomfortable part comes in. The guilt you feel during rest isn't always irrational. It's a response to a real tension. You've been taught, implicitly and explicitly, that your value is tied to your output. And when you're not producing, that sense of value drops. The guilt is your brain trying to protect you from feeling worthless by pushing you back into activity. Studies on self-worth and productivity suggest that people increasingly derive their sense of identity from what they do rather than who they are. When work or achievement becomes the primary measure of value, rest becomes threatening. It's not just a break from work. It's a break from the thing that makes you feel like you matter. This doesn't mean the guilt is justified or that you actually need to be productive all the time. It just means the guilt is serving a function. It's trying to keep you aligned with a belief system that says doing more is always better. And that belief system is deeply embedded, even when you consciously disagree with it. There's also the issue of comparison. When you rest, you're aware that other people are probably still working. Or at least, you assume they are. And that creates a sense of falling behind. You're not competing with those people directly, but your brain treats rest as a relative disadvantage. If everyone else is moving forward and you're not, you're losing ground. Research into social comparison shows that people are constantly measuring themselves against perceived norms. If the norm is constant productivity, then resting feels like deviating from what's expected. And deviation creates anxiety, even when the norm itself is unrealistic or harmful. Here's the thing that makes this so difficult. Rest is necessary. Your brain and body need downtime to function properly. But the structures around you don't always reflect that necessity. Workplaces reward availability and output. Social media shows people constantly doing things. Even leisure has become optimized, turned into something you're supposed to be good at or get the most out of. So when you rest, you're going against a current. Not a physical one, but a cultural and psychological one. And going against a current requires effort. Which means rest itself starts to feel like work. You're not just resting. You're resisting the pressure to be productive. And that resistance is exhausting. This doesn't mean rest is impossible or that guilt will always be there. It just means the guilt isn't a personal failure. It's a reflection of the environment you're navigating. And recognizing that can make the guilt a little easier to sit with, because you stop interpreting it as evidence that you're doing something wrong. The guilt during rest isn't telling you the truth about whether you need a break. It's telling you something about the way productivity has been framed in your life. And sometimes, understanding where a feeling comes from makes it lose some of its power. Not all of it, but enough to let you rest without feeling like you're failing.